Thank you, Fintan, and well done. I think this engagement has been fantastic, and I want to very much commend the Ceann Comhairle, who I know from my own personal experience is deeply committed to diversity and the principle of diversity. People who don't know me, Martin Conway is my name. I'm visually impaired, legally blind, 16% eyesight. I was elected a senator in 2011 for the first time, and I've been, I suppose, luckily enough, successfully re-elected on two separate occasions, 2016 and 2020. And when I came into Leinster House, I had been a county councillor for 8 years, and I assumed it would be maybe a little bit different, but after being elected and going into Leinster House, it was extremely different. It was very, very different. It was, if you remember, a time of unprecedented economic challenges in this country. And I was somebody with a vision impairment who did have needs and requirements. But back then, it was very difficult to look for anything because it had to be justified. And I did look at the time for extra secretarial support. And it was only after I did a one-to-one interview on the Late Late Show that became available. And, to do my job, it's not easy. It's a challenge. This morning, I don't drive, so this morning I had to obviously leave County Clare, where I'm from, at 5:15 to get to Limerick, to get the train. But that wasn't just me. That was my wife driving me because of the fact that I can't drive and never will be able to drive. Those day-to-day challenges that are not just there and necessary because of myself, but they do impact on your family, your supporters, your friends, colleagues, and so on. I tend to look at the glass half full, and I suppose that has always been my modus operandi in politics, because if people like me, who have been lucky enough to get elected to the Oireachtas, stand up constantly and complain and look for extra this and extra that, well, then you can be seen as a complainer or a grouch, and certainly you don't, I suppose, portray the type of image of being able to do the job that you want to, in order to encourage others, because I felt a very strong weight of responsibility over my shoulders, that I had to lead the way for other people with other disabilities to get elected. We've been lucky that we've had 2 wheelchair users elected to Leinster House, but we've had no person from the deaf community, and there's many other disabilities as well that have never had the opportunity. And after 11 or 12 years, it's sad from my perspective that we don't have another blind or a visually impaired person elected to the Oireachtas. As time evolved, I was approached to join the OSCE Democratic Institutions Expert Advisory Panel, which has been set up to look at and review why people who are visually impaired and who have disabilities in general aren't participating in politics to any large extent. That is representing 90 countries. And of that advisory panel of 15 people, I am the only elected member of Parliament with a disability on that particular advisory panel. There's a number, and our first speaker, who was outstanding, said, what can we do now, and what is the ideal world and the utopia? Well, from my perspective, the ideal world would be that I would have a fund to apply to when I need drivers. That library and research facility stuff would be available in podcast, where I wouldn't have to read it. That there would be an access officer that I could meet every few weeks and see what my requirements are, because depending on your portfolio, depending on what legislation you're dealing with, depending on the circumstances at the time, it can be different and it can change. An ideal world would be where facilities would contact you and say, well, there's certain works going on in various parts of the campus. But I suppose maybe I'm a victim of my own success to a large extent, in the sense that I don't use a guide dog or a white stick. So people tend to forget, and even colleagues regularly tend to forget. And it's only when I might do an interview, as I did recently with the Sunday Independent, that people say, God, I keep forgetting actually how bad your eyesight is. But what I hope comes from this is that in the first instance there's a realisation that we need to do more in the Oireachtas to create, if you like, the type of environment where when people with disabilities and people from diverse backgrounds get elected, that they can hit the ground running and do the job. But even more importantly, that we create an environment within this country where people who are different and who come from different backgrounds have the confidence to stand up and get elected. And finally, we spoke, and has been spoken about, the Count spoke about in his opening remarks, about the gender quota of 40%. Well, I think that in order to kick-start diversity and to see more people in politics elected from a diverse background, we need to have a 10% diversity quota, where the political parties will suffer financially in terms of central government funding if they don't meet that target, because quotas do work. They've worked in terms of increasing female representation, and they will work if they're adopted in terms of diversity representation as well.
Thank you very much, Martin.